For the first time ever with a problem. Thomas went over his interest. His book, a great book for One Back the Door under the War of Independence. It's a very big book on the War of Independence, and he did lots of other books, quartered as well with some of them went under Harry Greensmith. Tom's written a fair share over the years, and a huge interest in, I suppose really the War of Independence more than anything else, you know, but his interest I suppose in the hours weeks up the War of Independence and the Civil War, you know, so anyway, so just to introduce Tom, we start off anyway, as soon as we get the thing set up we can go on and show some of the slides that he's arranged. Okay Tom?
Thank you, Tony. What I was going to speak about is the rescue of Sean Hogan at Knocklong on the 13th of May 1919. Now, you say, who was Hogan? Hogan was very, very young. He was young for born outside the Prairie Town, a place called Stuck-on. Now, we had some slides at the house and whatever, but you might or might not be able to see them. Anyhow, he was born, believe it or not, in 1901, in May 1901. He took part in the ambush at Solihull Bay on the 21st of January 1919, in which two policemen, Constables MacDonald and O'Connell, were killed. It was an ambush to capture Jellignite. Now, it was regarded as the first incident in the War of Independence, the beginning of the War of Independence. After Solihull Bay, four of the ambushers, Sean Hogan, Dan Breen, Sean Tracy and Seamus Robinson, went on the run. And they were hiding out quite a lot in East Limerick and also in South Prairie. In April 1919, Hogan got very sick. He was, as I say, he was only 17. He wasn't 18. He wasn't actually 18 until the 12th of May 1919. And being young, as I say, his health kind of broke. So he was sent back with Dan Green. They went back to West Limerick, to Keynes of Bahawilk. Now, says you, where's Keynes of Bahawilk? Many of you will know Seamus O'Sullivan and Keynes of Bahawilk. Seamus's mother was one of the Keynes of Bahawilk, and her brother Michael Keane took care of Hogan and Breen. Anyway, after about 3 or 4 weeks in West Limerick recuperating, they came back to Prairie, and on the Sunday night of the 11th of May 1919, they attended a house dance. Attended a house dance at a house belonging to Eamon O'Dwyer, a place called Bala. Now, any of you that go from Tipperary town to Thurles matches will pass through Bala, or Bala, or whatever you want to call it. And as I say, Hogan was one of party of IRA that attended the dance. After the dance, they were supposed to go back to O'Keefe's of Glenloch. That's where the IRA party was staying. But not for the first time, and not for the last time. Sean Hogan's, shall we say, desire for female company got the better of him. And he went off to Mahers of Anfield with one of the O'Keefe's. Mahers and O'Keefe's were related. On his way to Mahers of Anfield, he was spotted by a policeman by the name of John Cotton. Cotton was a fireman, and very kind of devastating, nosy kind of policeman. And Cotton didn't know Sean Hogan, but he knew that anyone in the company of the Mahers and O'Keefe's was persona non grata for the RIC. So he went back to the barracks and he reported his observations. And a party of 4 policemen under Sergeant Wallace Now Wallace was the sergeant in charge at Rosskeen, and Sergeant Wallace led a party to matters of Enfield. Now, matters had been raided on numerous occasions, and contrary to what has always been written about Wallace, that he was a bully, it was apparently anything but. Every time he raided matters of Enfield, he would apologise for doing so beforehand and apologise again when the raid was over. Now you might say, such being the case, why would he do it? His belief was that while he was in charge of the raid, there was going to be no abuse of furniture or things like that. The thing would be done properly, and as you know, the matters always had the greatest respect for him. Now, on the morning of the 11th of May, the 11th of May, the Maher girls saw policemen coming in the distance, coming up the road, and they ran in and they told Hogan, "Get out, the police are coming." Now, a cooler man would have said, "Where are they coming from?" And he could have walked off in the opposite direction. But as I say, in fairness to Hogan, he was only 17, coming on 18. They rushed out of the house, down the field in front of the house, and jumped out onto the road. And if he did, he jumped into the hands of the policeman. The road, or the field, was about 4 feet. Now, as I say, we might be able to show it here afterwards. The field was 4 feet above the level of the road. As I said, the policeman saw him coming, he didn't see them. So he was taken from Anfield, first of all to Rosskeen, and from Rosskeen he was taken to Thurles. Now, in the meantime, as I say, word had gotten to Tracy. Now, whereas ostensibly Seamus Robinson was the OC to Prairie, and Dan Green might have claimed to be the OC. The real driving force into Prairie was Sean Tracy. And Tracy decided that, right or wrong, that Hogan was going to be arrested. He left a message with one of the O'Keefes of Knock to cycle to Tipperary and tell the IRA in Tipperary that they were planning to mount a rescue at Emly. The first idea they had was to rescue Hogan off the train in Emly. When they got to Emly, Green, Robinson and Tracy, they found there was no man in Tipperary there, and fortunately for them, Hogan was not on the train. So they cycled on to Maloney's of the Kelly, where they planned a bit better. And they got May Maloney to cycle to Galway. And in Galway, they got 2 O'Briens, Ned Foley and Bowman and Jimmy Scanlon to give them a hand. And the Galway boys cycled to, Sean Lynch, they cycled from Galway to Maloney's of the Kelly, where they planned the raid. They reckoned that he wasn't on the morning train, they reckoned he'd be on the evening train. And they had a lady in Thurles, Bridget Fitzpatrick, keeping an eye on the train. Now there was another guy called O'Connell. I don't think his relation was to me, but O'Connell, who sent messages as well. And the messages were sent to Shanahan's Courtyard in Knocklong. Now, in the meantime, Tracy had switched. The first plan of rescue was for the station of Emly. But the station is only about a mile from the barracks. But the beauty about Knocklong was there was no barracks in Knocklong. The nearest barracks is hospital about 3.5 miles away. So they switched the focus from Emly to Knocklong. And the four of the Galway fellows, Foley, Lynch, John Joe O'Brien and Jimmy Scanlon, cycled to Emly to get on the train at Emly and locate where on the train Hogan was being held, if he was being held. And that the other four of them, Breen and Robinson, Tracy and Ned O'Brien, would form the rescue party. As I say, messages were being sent from Thurles to Knocklong to Thomas Shanahan. And Shanahan, it was double Dutch to Shanahan. The IRA were using, or Tracy was using a code calling Hogan the Greyhound. And when Shanahan got a telegram, he was confused because he had actually sent a greyhound, believe it or not, to Naas in County Kildare the previous day, and he got a message telling him greyhound in Thurles still. So it stuck dust to him. Anyhow, the four Galgifers, as I say, got on the train at Emly. They discovered that Hogan was on the train and that he was in a separate compartment right up near the engine. And when the train got to Knocklong, they jumped off and they told Tracy and Ned O'Brien where he was. And Ned O'Brien and Sean Tracy, followed by the five Galgifers, rushed onto the train and up to the carriage, right up near the engine where the compartment where Hogan was being held. They pulled open the door and shouted, "Hands up, get out, Sean." And Wallace said, they said, "Hands up, get out." And Wallace said, "Not likely." And he resisted. And also Michael Enright, Constable Enright, threatened Hogan with his revolver. Now, you can argue whether, because things happen so fast. Either way, Ned O'Brien and Sean Tracy opened fire and they killed Michael Enright. And Ben and broke loose. Then there was two other policemen in the carriage. There was Jeremiah Ring and John Riley, and they had policemen's rifles, whereas Wallace and Enright had revolvers. Now the IRA, the unarmed men attacked both Ring and O'Reilly and wrested the rifles off them. Now they say that Ring was thrown out, the two of them were thrown out onto the railway and got hurt. But either way, Riley managed to wriggle his way back in and picked up a revolver, or picked up a rifle, and got back onto the platform and he opened fire. Now in the meantime, as I say, there was a struggle going on between Dan Breen and Tracy against Sergeant Wallace. Constable Enright is dead. So, as I say, Riley opens fire. He wounds Ned O'Brien and he wounded Jimmy Scanlon. Now, if he kept his cool, he probably could have killed him, but he did kind of lose the head, but at the same time he fought it. Now, the fourth policeman, Ring, was eventually the man who was to give damning evidence against a non-participant called Patrick Maher. Ring was thrown or jumped out of the carriage. The train driver said he looked out he had shots, and he looked out the side of the engine, and he saw a policeman without his tunic heading for Kilmallock. That was Ring. Now, as I say, Riley, on your left is Riley and Wallace. Now, eventually, Tracy managed to wrest the revolver off Wallace, and he shot him, mortally wounding him. Now, whilst Wallace was mortally wounded, he wasn't dead and he was conscious. When as I say, the third man, Ring, had departed, the area now had they had Hogan, and he was taken out to Daisy Burns' butcher shop stall. Now, so who are you here? Daisy Burns. Daisy Burns was the grandfather of David Hickey, who played football for Dublin. And Daisy Burns probably put the manacles on a block, a butcher block, and split them with a cleaver. Now, different people claim to have done that, but I do believe, let's be straight, the man most likely to do it is a man who's cleaving meat every day of the week. I would believe it was Daisy Burns that did it, even though many of us would claim the credit. The party now had a situation where Breen had opened fire on Riley. Now, by opening fire on him, he drew the Riley's fire on him, and he was seriously wounded in 2 lungs. But at least he saved the situation, because Riley was outside the carriage there, out on the platform, firing into the carriage. The IRA were effectively at his mercy. But as I said, Breen rushed up and threw his fire. Now, he seriously wounded Breen. Tracy was wounded in the exchange with Wallace before he got the better of Wallace. He was wounded in the throat. Ned O'Brien and Jimmy Scanlon are both wounded in the chest, but less seriously. So of the 8 IRA that took part in the rescue, 4 of them, are seriously or less seriously wounded. Anyhow, they managed to get out of the station, and they went across fields to Shanahan's of Glenara. Now, the same Shanahan that was in charge of the coal yard in Knocklong. There was 2 brothers, Michael and Thomas. Now, I think Thomas was in charge of the coal yard, and Mike was in charge of the farm. Either way, anyhow, the IRA got to Shanahan's, and they got a doctor, and he gave, I think it was Dr. Hennessy from Galway, and he gave medical care to the 4 men. But it was believed that Shanahan's was too close to Knocklong, that when the police would stop raiding, that they were much too close to Knocklong. So they moved from Knocklong to up towards Kilfinnan side, up to the cross of Cush, to Clancy's of Cush. Now, there was a Pat Clancy from Cush, was an extremely able IRA leader, and he organised the escape and the rescue. Not once the rescue, but the escape from Cush. The 2 wounded Galway fellas, they were taken up to Glenahoglisha. Now, I think Timmy O'Connor would know what Glenahoglisha is, up towards the Galties. The Maguires of Glenahoglisha. They were less seriously wounded, and they went up towards the Galties. The other, Breen particularly, and Tracy were seriously wounded, and Patrick Clancy arranged for the 40 Prairie men to be taken in 2 cars back to West Limerick, back again to our friends at Kings of the High Wilt. They drove through Kilmallock in 2 cars, drove past the barracks where Sergeant Wallace was taken after the shooting. Wallace died 18 hours after the attack. He made a statement on his deathbed, and in fairness to Wallace, he said he couldn't identify any of the men that attacked him. It's ironic that Ring, who did the run-up, and another man who stayed out of the way, Constable Edward O'Sullivan, they were able to get very clear evidence of identification. The fact that the people that I was identifying didn't participate was neither here nor there. They were, giving clear evidence. As I say, it happened in May. Now, small anecdotes that I picked up. Sergeant or Constable Enright was from Licadoon near Ballinity, and the following morning I actually interviewed, back in the 1980s, people who went to school, Knockay School, and Enright's father was the principal teacher in Knockay School. And there was a number of people that I interviewed that remembered what happened the following morning in Knocklong. That Mrs. Toomey from Balneety, there were blacksmiths in Balneety, no relation, whatever. And she drove up to the school in a pony and trap, driving at a furious pace. She called out Enright, called into the door. And Enright now was one of these old teachers who said that was using the bottle, as I say, left and right, a little, whatever you like to say. But when he came back into the classroom, he was in tears. He closed the school, he sent the kids home. And he actually never went back to teaching after that day. Now, as I say, Michael Enright was buried in Manchester churchyard. The second man, as I say, Wallace, was taken up to Roscommon. He was from Roscommon, and he was buried in Roscommon. The other two, as I say, Ring and O'Reilly. Now, O'Reilly, in fairness to him, held his end up. Even if he did lose the head a little bit, if he kept cool, he could have picked off the fellas inside the college, but at the same time, he couldn't be accused of cowardice. He was promoted sergeant. Now, Ring's stature had fallen so badly in the eyes of his superiors that he was putty when it came to giving evidence. He would give any evidence that was required. That's the bottom line. In September 1919, the police raided. Now remember, the attack took place in May, and for 4 months nothing was happening, and everyone thought that the police, were going over, that there was no one going to be arrested. We've gone through that, let's say. Now, let's say, in total, there were 9 IRA who took part, either directly involved or took part in it. Sean Tracy, as I say, Dan Breen, Seamus Robinson, Ned O'Brien, Jimmy Scanlon, Ned Foley, John Joe O'Brien, Sean Lynch, and Hogan. Now,
was that O'Brien from Fitmore?
No. The 2 O'Briens are from Galway. Right. Sean Lynch is from Galway.
Are they related?
They're brothers.
All right.
Jimmy Scanlon is from Galway. Many will know Tim Ryan.
Yeah.
Jimmy Scanlon was Tim Ryan's uncle.
Yeah. He's not in William Street Barracks, isn't he?
Right?
He escaped from William Street Barracks.
He didn't. No, different man. Anyhow, as I say, Ned O'Brien and John Joe O'Brien were brothers. Jimmy Scanlon had a big number of brothers who were in the IRA, right? And as I say, he was Tim Ryan's uncle. Many of you will know Stan O'Brien, or some of you will know Stan O'Brien. Now, Stan is John Joe's son. Sean Lynch never, he did get married, but very sad situation. His wife himself split up. They had one child, and his child died very young. And Michael Cummins in Galway, the shop in Galway, Michael Cummins would be his grandnephew. Right?
Timmy Cummins.
And Timmy Cummins, yeah. Ned Foley would be a cousin of my grandfather's. He was executed. Now, as I say, he took part. Unlike Patrick Maher, who didn't take part, 2 of them were executed. You can hold it on. The LIC participants were James Wallace from Roscommon. Wallace was the sergeant in charge in the barracks at Roscommon. Enright was actually based in Thurles. And the other 2, Ring and O'Reilly. Now, Ring was in Roscommon. Riley was originally from up the country, which you see after Solihull Beg, there was a big concentration of police into County Tipperary. And one of those fellows brought in was O'Reilly. Now, as I say, O'Reilly was in County Tyrone, and we'll come to him again in a while. Now, there was another man on the train, Constable Edward O'Sullivan, Norris Seaman. He didn't go to their rescue. And he didn't go and help when Wallace was wounded. He didn't go to Wallace's aid to give him, first aid or anything. There was a girl from Kilmallock called Marion Gallagher, or Marion was her name. Gallagher was her name anyhow. Her father was the postmaster in Kilmallock. So she went and gave the comfort to Wallace, despite the fact, as I said, there was a number of British soldiers and a number of or I see him hanging around.
Where's he from?
Right?
Where's he from?
He was stationed in Belgooly. I'm not too sure where he's from. I saw with a name like O'Sullivan, he's probably Kerry Cork. So, now, as I said, the shooting anyway, struggle between Tracy and Wallace. That was probably the biggest high point, or if I want to use the word high point, was a struggle, a massive struggle between Wallace, who was a very big man. Now, in fairness, as I say, he was given very bad press, but he didn't deserve it because he's actually a decent man. And himself and Tracy got stuck into a life and death struggle. And eventually, Wallace shot Tracy through the neck, but Tracy was very lucky. The bullet missed the actress, and he wrenched the gun off of Wallace and shot him twice. As I say, we've spoken about the intervention of Constable John O'Reilly. O'Reilly, as I say, was from County Tyrone, and the last man performance of Jelly Ring, he was a runner who came good when it came to giving perjured evidence. Now, the 4 IRA men were wounded, Ned O'Brien and Jimmy Scanlon, and they were taken, as I say, first up to Maguire's of Glenahoglasha, and then they were taken up the Galties and up East Cork, up around that area, East Cork, into West Waterford. Now, we moved around the whole time, because remember, regardless of what people say, in May 1919 there were very few doors open to the IRA. Regardless of what people said afterwards for pension claims, very few. And I would say one place where there were a lot of doors open was East Limerick. You know, Brian, when he wrote his first account of my fight for Irish freedom, he probably told the truth, but was, shall we say, purged from the later versions because it wasn't good for politics. He said the only people that stood by us, right, were Ned O'Brien, Jimmy Scanlon, Davy Burke, and Happy Ryan. They're all in East Limerick. So, you know, you have to ask the question, why is he saying that? Now, I believe that he spent a lot of time around Castlecommon. You know, that with Joe Herbert and Sean Carroll. You know, that they spent nearly as much time in Limerick as they did in Tipperary. The 2 unwounded Galway men. Now, the 2 unwounded Galway men were extremely lucky, because the sergeant in Galway was a fellow called Edward Kennedy. Now, if I say that James Wallace, or that Peter Wallace was an honourable man, I would say the opposite for Edward Kennedy, and he's passed completely under the radar. Kennedy's daughter, Mary Kennedy, had spotted Ned O'Brien and Jimmy Scanlon borrowing bikes to cycle to Knocklong, and straight away she told her father, and they're suspect. Now, when they don't turn up after getting wounded and they have disappeared, you know, they were listed on the list of 12 suspects. Right? Now, the other 2 Galway boys from the village, Sean Lynch and John Joe O'Brien, were awfully lucky that Mary Kennedy didn't spot them, because you know, they were around the village, they'd been picked up. Now, as I say, the 2 of those, John Joe O'Brien and Sean Lynch, after the rescue, the night of the rescue, they were told Ty Clowley had taken charge of the fellows at Glenahoglasha. And first of all they did was they came up with solid alibis. Now, we know they're telling lies, but at the same time, you know, they put together fairly solid alibis. And the critical thing was they were to go home and sleep in their own beds that night. Now, Ned Foley, who was living in Duntree, a good bit outside the village, for some reason he didn't go home. But the other 2 boys, O'Brien and Lynch, went home. And when the police raided the following morning, they found the 2 boys in their beds. So they're not suspect. They wasn't on the list of suspects. Whereas Foley was. Because when they raided Foley's house at Duntree, he wasn't there. And it doesn't matter that he went back to the barracks afterwards to explain himself. Once he come on the radar, ran it. Anyhow, As I said, the escapists went to Shanahan's of Glendale, of course, too close to Knocklong, but they were given first aid and so whatever was required. Now, one of the things I never understand was when the police raided Shanahan's at a later stage, they found the remains of blood stained overdose that hadn't been properly burned, and you would have said, that surely would have owned the Shanahan's, but it didn't. Now we say that whatever way the council argued or didn't argue it, Shanahan's actually got away with it. After Shanahan's, both the Prairie men were taken to Cush, and as I said, the Galway men went to Hogan, and then the boys went back to West Limerick. Now, from May to September, nothing happened. Everyone thought the thing had blown its course, like the attack at Shanhead. There was no one arrested for it. But in September 1919, the police raided, and there were 6 men arrested. Patrick Maher, Edward Foley, the 2 Shanahans, and two others, Michael O'Connell and a fellow called Michael Murphy. They were arrested, and they were brought into Limerick, and they were held pending trial. Now, one of the things that the police did, when there was an identity trial or an identity parade to be held, the policemen like Breen and O'Sullivan and a couple of military men, they were allowed to go into the jail and mingle with prisoners before the identity parade. Of course they identified the ones that were wanted to be identified. Now, as I said, that was brought out at the trial, but unfortunately 2 policemen had been killed, so someone was going to pay. The first trial of the 6 men was held in Armagh. Now, the defence counsel would be John Power from Kilmallock, and he had a barrister by the name of Best. Right? Now, Best was, let us say, an Irishman, but he was actually a very honourable man in the true sense of the bar. And when it was put to the men on trial, do you want to stick with Best, or do you want to bring in Tim Healy? And they said, no, we'll stick with Best. Now, Best was an honourable man, as I said, and when they saw the list of potential jurors for Armagh, Paul was horrified. There was out of 135, I think, over 100 Irishmen. Now, Best said one thing. He said, these men are Irishmen, but he says, an awful lot of them are also honest men. And as it turned out, 2 bills were only found against Maher, Foley and Murphy. 2 Shanahans and Michael O'Connell. Now, I don't know how the Shanahans got off, because there was evidence of them, as I say, blood-stained clothing found on their farm, but they got off, right, because the jury in Armagh contended that there wasn't enough evidence against them. Now, the choice given then, right, the authorities in Dublin were devastated, because they thought there'd be no way that Ireland come from County Limerick would be exonerated by a jury in Armagh. And rather than, what I forgot to say was, the trials in Armagh were eventually aborted because our friend Riley, Sergeant Riley, had been Moria captured. He didn't turn up to give evidence at the trial, so the trial had to be put back and postponed. Now, as I said, the 2 Shanahans and O'Connell had already been exonerated, so there are now 3 men facing trial. And let's be straight, they had no problem about going back to Armagh for the trial, but the authorities decided we couldn't take that chance again. So the choice given to them was trial in Belfast by a Belfast jury or military court-martial in Dublin. They opted for the military court-martial. Now, as I say, who knows what might have happened in Belfast, but they were eventually tried by court-martial in March 1921. Of the three of them, like Michael Murphy, had taken no part in the rescue, but what he had done, right, he was a member of the Irish Guards. He was a big man, well over 6 foot tall, and when Riley was shooting kind of willy-nilly, Murphy was supposed to have run down the platform and said, "Fix it, will someone give me a gun and I'll take care of him." That was taken to mean that he was a member of the IRA, which he wasn't. But either way, as I say, when the military court-martial was held in Dublin Castle, he was exonerated. Maher and Foley were sentenced to be executed. Now, the critical evidence given against Maher was given by our friend Constable Jerry Ring, who had set a record for running to Kilmallock, and turned up outside. He went towards Kilmallock, and the following morning he was up outside Emily RIC barracks in only in his underpants and scapulars, in a very distressed state. He was meant to get clear evidence. Now, he said that he was in the carriage and he was getting the better of one of the IRA, and that this fellow would shout to someone that was leaving the carriage, "Paddy, Paddy, come back, help me." And that Paddy came back and knocked him off, and knocked out Ring, and the mystery IRA escaped. Now, the irony about the thing was, in the 8 participants, the people that took part in the rescue, none of them had the name of Paddy or Paddy. So where did he come with that one? I mean, fair enough, you could give genuine evidence of identification where you mistook one person for another, but there's no way that you can purport to have heard Paddy shouted when there was no Paddy there. Anyhow, as I said, the 2 men were executed on the 7th of June 1921. Now, they were executed at 7 o'clock in the morning. They were the last fellows from the War of Independence to be executed. And there's a certain irony in that they weren't actually the last man executed. The last man executed was a man called William, he was a black and tan from Dublin, William Mitchell, black and tan from Dublin. Right? Now, I think there's a certain irony in that the last 3 people hanged by the British, one was the black and tan, the other one was an innocent man, and the third that Edward Foley did participate. He didn't fire shots, but he was party to what happened, right? Just move on a little bit. I have some slides here. That's the remains today of Hogan's house at Stuck-on, outside the Prairie Town. So Hogan, as I say, came from Glenanne. His father was a 40-acre farmer, Matthew Hogan. He married a lady called Johanna Corbett from the Noble. And so there was only actually 2 in the family. Now I suppose you could say it was a form of Irish contraception. We had married late in life, so you won't have too many offspring. They had 2 sons. Now there was even a question as to whether they were actually married when Sean was born. But as I say, Sean was born in May 1901. At that stage, his father was well in his 40s. His father died in 1915, and as I said, all that was at home was Sean, his younger brother Matthew, and the mother. Now, after Salahead Beg, the RIC showed their route dismissal. They arrested Matthew Hogan, and they arrested a young fella, a 9-year-old by the name of Connors, and they took him away to Dublin and held him in captivity. I mean, Matthew Hogan was only about 14, and Connors, whose father worked for Sean Tracy's mother, was only about 9 or 10, and they were held for quite a number of weeks before they were eventually released. That's the house, Manors of Enfield. Now, I think at the time it was a thatched house, but as I say, that's it more or less as it is today, where Hogan was staying when he got the road to get out. Now, what you can see here, this is the road, right? That's the field. So there's a clear 4 or 5 feet from above the level. The field is a clear 4 or 5 feet above the level of the road. So when Hogan ran down the field, the police and the road, all they had to do was position themselves. Here he comes, took straight into their arms. That's photographs taken in America. Now, as I said, Hogan was very good looking. He was a very good looking young fella. Now, whatever we might say about his skittishness, he was very brave. There's no question about that. Man in the middle is Father Peter Scandon, a brother to Jim Scandon. Michael Scandon, the man was killed in Thomas Street, and again, did all the uncles of Tim Ryan. As I said, the man on the right is Dan Breen. Now, there's an awful lot to say against Dan Breen. But I would say one thing, 2 things, right? My family came from that part of the country, and they would have known the Hogans and Dan Breen very well. They had a very good time for Matthew Hogan. Not that much time for Sean, but they had very good time for Dan Breen. And what is not appreciated about Breen, in 1988 I interviewed Joe Graham. You would have known Joe Graham, right? And Joe Graham was part of a Free State garrison captured in the Civil War at Carrickmanish. They were taken initially to Palace Green and then on to Tipperary Town. Now, the 6 officers that were captured were held and taken to Cork as prisoners of war. Kind of, dare I say, as hostages really. And when Cork was attacked from the sea by the Free State in August 1922, it was feared that the 6 East Limerickers would be executed in reprisal. But Dan Breen stepped in and he had the 6 fellows released, and he signed a safe pass for the 6 of them. Now, Joe Graham told me this in 1988. And about 20 years ago, John Joe O'Brien, whose father, or John Joe O'Brien's son, Stan, showed me his father, John Joe, was one of the 6 that were captured. And he showed me a safe pass signed by Dan Breen. So whatever is said about Breen, the one thing about him was he's never given credit for the efforts he made to head off the Civil War and also to soften the blow of the Civil War. I mean, he's always been portrayed as a ruthless gunman. Well, I think there was a different side to him that isn't sometimes known. Now, taking the same situation with our friend Hogan, when the 6 East Limerickers were taken to Palace Green, Hogan was there with the Republican garrison in Palace Green, and he didn't pretend to know John Joe O'Brien. And eventually O'Brien got frustrated and says, for fuck's sake, Hogan, if I knew you were as big a bee as you are, right, do you think I'd have gone to Knocklong to risk my life to rescue you? Now, a second thing happened between the 2 of them. There was no love lost there, whereas there was a great between John Joe O'Brien and Dan Breen. A second incident happened between John Joe O'Brien and Hogan early in the Civil War. O'Brien was in charge of a Free State garrison in Galway, a dodgy issue because they were surrounded by Republican forces, and apparently Hogan had an 83 flying college in Immaculate, and he sent a girl into Galway with a note for John Joe O'Brien telling him to surrender the barracks in Galway. O'Brien, who was a cool individual, he wrote back, he says, I don't particularly care about the barracks, he says, but you'll have to come in and get it yourself. I don't think he went any further. As I say, again, here we have the three Scanlon brothers. Father Peter Scanlon, who was a priest in America. Jimmy Scanlon. Now, Jimmy, like a lot of those of us, that had suffered. Jimmy died in 1939 from TB. The fellow on the right is Michael Scanlon, and he's your man that was killed alone in Thomas Street in October 1920. Move on. That's the winning photograph of John Joe O'Brien and his wife Lily. Now, John Joe was a small man, handy-sized man, but he was extremely brave, extremely tough. And when Sergeant Kennedy, the infamous Sergeant Kennedy, was questioning him after Knocklong, his brother had gone on the run, his Ed had gone on the run, and he said to him, "When did you last see your brother Edward?" And the man said, "Last Tuesday." That was the day of the rescue. That's the rescue. And where is he now? "I don't know. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you anyhow." So I was saying, and that's on the record in Q. And I say he wasn't a shrinking violet. Four men here was said. The odd man out is our friend here, Michael Brennan. Hogan, I don't think Hogan is there. I can't see very clearly. That's Sean Tracy there anyhow. Robinson and Breed. Hogan isn't there. That's a photograph of or an image of the station of Knocklong around the time of the rescue. Now, it's a far more active place then than it is today. That's Harris's Hotel, we say. No one has it today. Now, that's O'Reilly, father and son. Now, getting back to the facts of the trial in Armagh, there's never been officially. What was purported to have happened was that O'Reilly met his brothers. Now, he had four brothers in the RIC, and they met up. You see, they were from Tyrone. So when there was a trial in Armagh, they met up, right, on the night before the trial, and they went to a pub in the Irish market, Armagh, and Maria O'Reilly is captured and kidnapped by the NRA. And when the trial collapses, he's released. But the truth is that O'Reilly went, dare I say it, on the piss. He was too drunk to appear to give evidence the following morning. So the only way they could cover for him is to pretend that he had been hijacked or kidnapped. And now, that house, some of you will recognise, that's the old schoolmaster's house at Toomey near Ballinity. It's owned by Mrs. Levy. That's where Michael Enright was born. His father, Patrick Enright, was the principal in Knockface School. That's Enright's headstone in Manister Graveyard. Now, it's to the memory of Michael Enright, also his father, Patrick. Now, Patrick died in 1929. He would have been about 75 when he died. Sean Finn. Now, as I said, Sean Finn arranged with Keynes of Ahawilk. Sean Finn was very young, he was very able, very brave, and he arranged to hide the Tipperary men when they were in West Limerick. Now, they had a couple of stints in West Limerick, and as I say, Finn took care of them, and as I say, very good, very able, very brave, very young, about 22. Michael Keane, another man from West Limerick who kept the end up. It was Keynes of Ahawilk. They were brought on a couple of occasions. Now, Keane was the most senior IRA in West Limerick to go Free State, but his health broke, and eventually he went to Australia to try and recover his health. but he died in 1933 at 34 years of age. Now, as I say, going right through the thing, you find that, okay, not everyone was killed, but by God, their health suffered. You know, like if you take the men that took part in Knocklong, Breen, ironically, the most seriously wounded, he lived the longest. He died in 1969. Now, he didn't survive 50 years after the event. Hogan died in 1968. Sean Tracy was killed in 1920. Ned Foley was executed in 1921. Sean Lynch died from TB in 1925. Jimmy Scanlon died from TB in 1939. Seamus Robinson died in the early 60s. As I say, you can go through it, like very, very few lived to be old men. This is Keys of Ahawilk, but Tracy Hogan Breen was Robinson. Right? Oh, Ahawilk is on the road between Newcastle West and Drumcolor. It's in the parish of Fiona. You know, I think Seamus Flanagan, their family would have come from around there, so that you know, as I say, Seamus O'Sullivan, some of you will know him. Now, Seamus's mother was one of the kings of Ahawilk. This is a Pyman photograph. It's taken shortly before the execution of Maher and Foley. Maher's the man here on the right, or this man, and this is Foley, slightly taller man. Both their heads suffered while they were in prison. This is an auxiliary, and this is a policeman or a prison guard. Now, even though you're facing the hangman, they have accepted their fate, and there doesn't appear to be any kind of animosity. Right? That's what I'm saying. There doesn't appear to be any animosity. This is the last slide now. This is the only one that I've seen. Well, we did the one in that Kelly, where Patrick Maher is listed on a plaque. Now, I do not believe Maher was a member of the IRA, but it doesn't matter. The man accepted his fate. I mean, it must be very difficult when you're as innocent as days long, and you're convicted by perjured evidence. As I said, that a couple of years ago, the Garda Review published an account by Ring's nephew, who was an executive with the IDA, in which he gives a glowing account of his uncle's participation as an IRA intelligence officer. Jesus, I'd hate to think what he did only if he was a British intelligence officer.
He says there Maher was a member of the IRA.
Look, retrospective. I mean, I've said one. You see very few memorials of IRA volunteers. They're all to officers that get posthumously promoted.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's true.
No, anyway.
In the RIC barracks.
Right, the two questions. Did the IRA have arms training? No. And do you know why? If they had ammunition, they couldn't afford to fire it blank. Do you know what I mean? They couldn't afford.
They would have no training at all.
Sorry?
They would have no training.
Well, Tom Barry, when he formed his flying column, he allowed each fellow fire 3 rounds. But I think, in fairness to Barry, he had a lot more ammunition. Because let's be straight and let's be clear about it. Michael Collins made sure that every spare round of rifle ammunition that came into Dublin went to Cork.
Yeah.
There's no much about that. Now you could say they made good use of it, fair enough, but I don't think, in fairness, in East Limerick or South Prairie, they could have been accused of shooting, or in East Clare either. That they were using it when they got it.
So
communications, telephones. Now, they were beginning to bring radios. You would see towards the end of the War of Independence, because radio officers being hired, and the British Navy especially, they would have had radio officers. Like a case in point, Alan Dukes, right? his grandfather, now I knew his father, Jim Hughes, his grandfather was a radio officer with the British Navy. And when the British moved out, the Free State prevailed on him to stay on, because he was a trained radio officer. So they were beginning to use radio, but not to any, luckily for the IRA, not to any great extent.
Before I came, I was just doing a small bit of reading up. There was one person referred to as a linesman, and linemen at that time were involved in checking the wiring system on the radio system, and they would have been checking for Morse code. So surely they would have had Morse code in the RIC stations.
Now, I don't think so. Now, I'll tell you why. The most of the messages going to the RIC station, and the classic one was Kilfinnan. They went by telegram to the post office, right? Now, and the post office would hand the message on to the barracks, and they would have a code, that they deciphered. Now, what happened in Kilfinnan, and how we know this, is a girl called Mary Burke. She had been given a copy of the codes by the IRA. So every message that came in, right, the IRA had it before the British.
And she passed it on, obviously.
Yeah, but the tragedy was, now you will know this one probably, the tragedy was that Jack McCarthy was a magpie, and he never got rid of anything. So she had deciphered the number of messages and passed them on to Jack. Jack's briefcase was captured, and sure enough, the British found deciphered messages, and they figured that the only place it could have come from was post office in Kilfinnan. So two intelligence officers, two RIC intelligence officers went in the one day, and they watched Mary Burke deciphering, or not deciphering, but watched her handwriting. And then they said, "Is that your handwriting?"
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
So she ended up about Mountjoy. Now she escaped out of Mountjoy during the truce. There's a very famous photograph taken of three women, we say, in a place called Duckles Grove in Carlow during the truce. Now there's a very tall girl in it, Mary Burke. That's Mary Burke.
Right.
You know them.
I don't.
Right?
No, I wouldn't.
She's been travelled.
He doesn't want it meeting or something. He'll get 6 months. He'll get 6 months.
She never got nice, so you've only gone over.
As you mentioned radios, the first radio broadcast ever made in the world was during the 1916 Rising, that they used the ship's radio in the hopes that the story would be picked up on a ship and relayed to newspapers in the United States. And that's accepted as the first ever radio broadcast in the world.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't dispute that. I'm just saying there may have been, but in widespread use, what were they doing? As I say, like there was radio technology out, but they weren't really using it on a widespread basis. As I say, most of the communications were coming through in the form of coded telegrams, right? Except that whatever else it was, Michael Collins was brilliant at getting hold of the codes. So dare I say it, girls in post offices around the country were able to decipher the codes. Now most of them were lucky that they weren't dealing with a magpie like Jack McCarthy, and that when he had the code, the message got, he tore up the message. But as I say, I'm not disputing that in 1916, because there were radios there, but they wasn't in widespread use.
No, but just in the history of radios, that's recognised as the first ever broadcast.
Did Dan Breed mention in his first edition that they got a lot of information from Paul Harris and Knocklong?
No, but Seamus Ford did. Seamus Ford said that Paul Harris was his best intelligence officer for a very simple reason. Paul Harris was Church of Ireland. He wasn't suspect. Yeah. Yeah, they had the post office as well.
Yeah.
And you're right, Seamus. He was.
Was he not in the first edition of Dan Breen's book?
Now, he may have been, but you know.
Was he not deleted in the second edition?
Well, you see, Breen deleted a lot of things in the second edition because, like, if you say that the best people that stood by you are all in East Limerick, and you're looking to be elected as a member of town for South Prairie, not good.
And John Hogan staying on
Come back to the right. Tom.
What about Sean Tracy? Only his demise.
Sorry?
Sean Tracy.
What about Sean Tracy?
Yeah. In my view, Tracy was the bravest one of the lot. Now you can say he was the most ruthless if you want. But I think he was the driving force in Tipperary. And remember, when they went after him in Dublin, now they attacked him in the Republican Outfitters in Talbot Street in October 1920. There were more senior men in the Republican Outfitters that day, Leo Henderson and Paddock Clancy. They were much more senior in the what's called the IRA than Sean Tracy. But they didn't go near them, they didn't go after them, they were after Tracy. Because they knew, in my book, they knew that if they took out Tipperary or took out Tracy, they took a lot of the sting out of Tipperary. And if you compare, in fairness, if you compare the amount of activity in South Tipperary before Tracy's death and after Tracy's death, you know.
Was there an incident in the Limerick Road with Tracy, and was she surrounded by the Free State?
No, that's Civil War.
Civil War, yeah.
There was a Ryan that killed her.
What's that?
And Denny Lacey was killed her. Right? Yeah, he was on the wrong side of it.
Oh, Ryan, he said he was Ryan.
Yes, that's right. He was killed during the Civil War. Yeah, he was a Free State soldier.
Yeah.
I come from Doon, East Limerick.
Right?
I come from Doon,
Yeah.
East Limerick.
Very good.
Sean Tracy's mother was born in
That's
Rila
right. She's Alice.
and most of the activity took place in and around Doon. Tracy was raised down in Toomey
Yeah.
just below Doon village.
Yeah. Dan Alice.
So was Alice is there then.
Yeah.
Phil Shanahan, you didn't mention him.
But
Phil Shanahan was one of the boys with Tracy and all them.
Yeah.
He ended up in Dublin at the public house.
Oh, that's right.
He was the pub that they cycled to, that the big fella cycled to, he'd buy, and they had their meetings. But he was one of the same crew that go up with Brian and Tracy. But Brian particularly never had his heart to the Civil War.
No, that's the point I'm making.
And he said,
I'm making that point.
He said, it's not for me.
Yeah.
But there is a story going out my way that Collins was going to meet Brian in Cork, and that Brian had set up some kind of a rendezvous that he could try and stop it. Now that's true or not?
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah,
Because
he was going to stop it.
well, you see, he was going to try. He was never going to stop
But
it.
that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Brian was in the dugout. He was captured in the dugout.
That's right. Now,
And then the man that he walked out with his hand up, he said to him, if my hat was in this other fight, I wouldn't be walking out you with my hand up.
well, that's true. It was like,
Yeah.
I have no doubt in what you're saying.
That man was the Limerick Hunter's grandfather, Brown Knocklong. He was the man he walked out
Right.
in the Free State Army.
Now, there was an incident just a few days before that, right, at McDonough's of Lisbonne, right. Now, old McDonough was sitting, you know, they had a kind of a seat across the road from where the house was, and they had old McDonough as a kind of a watch out for or a lookout for the Republicans, and Jerry Kiley and Dan Reedy were inside in McDonough's. The Free State are coming from Galway. Now, there's a long, those of you that know the road into Lisbon, there's a long 300-400 yards, you know, up the hills into Lisbon. But old MacDonagh, you know, a man in his 70s with 2 sticks, he runs across the road, you know, and straight away, so the Free State know he's not doing that for nothing. Right? So they attacked, or they raided the house. Now, Breen and Kylie had plenty of time to get out. And Breen said, come on, he said, we're getting out of here. Ah, no, says Kylie, I'm stronger words, so I'm going to take some of these efforts with me. And he went out the front door with a machine gun. He opened fire and he killed a fellow called John O'Neill from Kilteely. And when he fired this thing, the gun jammed. And so Free State soldiers come in behind O'Neill, blew him away.
So where's my book? Where's the attendance book? If you come up that side, no one signed it that side, yeah? Sit it up that side there. Sign the book. Have it. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm from here,
Sorry?
that key that Australia, was it just because of health?
Sorry, can't hear you.
What you say? You want to tell me?
Sorry, I can't.
I have it. Go on, say.
I said the key that went to Australia
Yeah.
from I'm from near there. Was it only on health grounds that he went?
Yes.
Or was he on the run?
No.
Did he come back?
No, he's you see, as I say, both sides, now people think it's only Republicans that suffered in health. Both sides, all these fellas are young men, right? And, you know, they're out in dugouts and whatever the hell was said. They don't have the best of clothing, right? And they're out for 12 months, 2 years, and their health suffers. Now, Michael Keane had been a premier manager, and as I say, his health collapsed, and he had to go to Australia to try and recover because of the dry weather and the heat. You know, unfortunately, you know, he suffered a heart attack in 1933. Now, the irony about it is, or the very sad thing about it was, he wrote home to his mother, telling her. Now, he married the widow. Believe it or not, he married the widow of a British officer. A British officer who had been killed in the First World War. He married his widow, and he said, you know, he's taking great care of me. You know, don't worry about me. He's taking great care of me. And he wrote home to his mother. And the very sad thing was that the telegram announcing his death arrived before his last letter. You know, very sad.
Was that in Australia that happened?
Yes.
But that he didn't come back, so
No, he never came back.
No, it's just, it was interesting looking at the photographs. My very good friend, John Breen, is, his grandfather was Dan Breen's first cousin, and his own father came from Tipperary as well, but they live now in Warren Point.
Yeah.
His uncle was very involved in the area up in the north. But he said that his grandfather was younger than Dan Breen, and Dan Breen tried to enlist him, tried to get him involved in the IRA, but the family wouldn't allow it because he was too young. Yeah. But John is English, and he always jokes about the fact, he said Dan Breen will probably turn in his grave to know there's a member of the family that speaks with an English accent.
Well, I don't, you see, as I said to you, Breen is painted very black by some people.
Yeah.
Now, my people would have known him. My father would have come from a place called Drumcliff, quite close to where Hogan was from. And they would have known Hogan, two Hogans and Dan Breen. And they would have very good time for Dan Breen. They wouldn't have great time for Sean Hogan. They would have good time for Matthew Hogan.
But it's shocking how alike he is to John.
Well, you know,
it's just
yeah. One thing that Breen, Tracy and Hogan had in common, all their fathers died when they were very young. So dare I say it, they were the kings of the castle. They could do what they liked, and they did do what they liked.
Did Sean Hogan stay long in New York?
Sorry?
Did Sean Hogan, did he stay long in New York?
Stay long in
New York?
No. No, he came back for the Civil War. He came back for the Civil War. As I said, his afterlife, a bit sad in a way, like his marriage broke up. Now, as did Dan Breen's. You know, like, you see fellas that are on the run and, you know, in danger, under stress all the time. Be fair about it. They're young fellas, right? The pressures are, you know, huge. And I think, you know, like, I've gone through the thing a fair bit now, and I'd say the number of men that took part in the War of Independence and ended up in a regular family situation, I'd say they're relatively few. You know, so I'm not saying it's not a number, but relatively few. There would be a minority.
Thank you.
What election did Dan Breen stand for?
He stood for 1923, I think, and 27. Now, guess thing about Breen was, and this is where he's coming from. Breen went into the Dáil before Fianna Fáil. You know, Breen actually took his seat in the Dáil. Now you can argue how he did this as allegiance, but he took his seat before Fianna Fáil. Now, he was able to capture votes. Now my father's family would be pro-treaty. They were always both would be. So he was able to capture votes across the board. He wasn't, like, there's a story told about himself and John Joe O'Brien. Now, if the story about John Joe O'Brien and Hogan are a little bit waspish, there's a story told about John Joe O'Brien went back to Galway and he had a pub. And while the Free State were in power, John Joe kept John Joe's hours. Right? He opened and closed when he felt like it. And there was nothing a Sergeant Kearns could do about it. Anyhow, in 1932, cataclysmic happening. De Valera wins the election. And straight away the Sergeant, he's easy on the rest of the publicans in Galway, but by Jesus he gets his opportunity on John Joe and he clamps. Right? So John Joe says to him, Sergeant, if you don't go easy, he says, you'll have me out of business. And the Sergeant is supposed to have said to him, well, John Joe, you should know there's a different jockey on the horse now. He had a dilemma. There was no point in going back to his friends in Common Gael, right, because they had no clout. So he went to his friend, Mr. Breen. And Breen and John Joe always remained friendly. Now, whereas it would be a waspish relationship between himself and Hogan and Breen were very friendly, but the relationship between Breen and John Joe was very good. So he went to Breen and he explained his position, and the story was that Breen went to Mr. De Valera and he says, Mr. De Valera, there's a friend of mine down in County Limerick called John Joe O'Brien. He's getting an awful lot of hassle from Sergeant of the Guards down there. Do you want me to do something about it, or will you? and the story was that they've moved the Sergeant.
Tell me what the story where I started about the Scanlon being shot. The plaque is up here in Thomas.
Oh yeah, there's a plaque in Thomas Street outside Geary's. Outside Geary's.
Next to Geary's, in the corner.
The other corner, right? Now, what happened was Michael Scanlon and Ty Crowley had gone to Cork in October 1920 visiting fellows that were on hunger strike. Right? And on their way back, they came back to Kilmallock station. And when they got off the train at Kilmallock, they were spotted by ex-British soldier. And who reports them to the barracks. Now, it was known they went to a place called Ballinastone, the box of Ballinastone. Now, you might know what that is, David. I think one of them was great for one of the books, either Michael Scanlon or Ty Crowley was great for the books. and they were raided, and the 2 boys were arrested. Now, the police weren't sure who they were, so they took him on a tour of the barracks around East Limerick. They took him to Kilfinnan and to Galway. Now, Sergeant Maguire in Kilfinnan, who was also painted badly, but who wasn't actually a bad individual, he didn't recognise them, even though he knew bloody well who they were, right? And they took him on to Galway. And our friend, Mr. Kennedy, he recognised them. So they were taken anyhow and taken back to Kilmallock, and they were held overnight. Now, they had only 1 pair of handcuffs, and they tied Michael Scanlon with wire. Now, an NCO came on in the morning, kind of a humane guy, and he said, "Just you wouldn't tie a dog's hands with wire." So he cut the wire off of Scanlon, right? Now, they were taken from Kilmallock then to Rough and into Limerick. And when they were being taken off the lorry at the timber outside William Street Barracks, Crowley was taken off first. Right, he was at the back of the lorry. And Scanlon spotted his opportunity. So he vaulted off the lorry and down Little Castle Street and down Thomas Street before they reacted. And he went into Beery's, it was Beery's bakery at the time, and there was bakers down there, and they covered him with bags. Right? And the police weren't sure where he was gone. You know, they didn't know whether he had gone down onto O'Connell Street and off, or where it was. So someone went into Beery's, and they said, "Did any man run in here?" "No," they said, "we saw no one." So went back up onto the street. And when we went back up to the street, there was a woman there. "Hey, he's still down there, he's still down there." He didn't come down. So they went back down the second time and they shot him. No, we never know who that woman was, but by Jesus, she deserved it. She deserved it.
But there's a huge plaque overhead, right in the corner there. There's a men's wear shop down there.
Just come back to the thing. The reason Scanlon got caught was when they attacked the RIC barracks in Kilmallock in May 1920. There was a raid by ex-British soldiers from the town of Kilmallock on Castle Oliver. They looted Castle Oliver. And when Scanlon found out about it, he was livid. And he had all the fellows who took part in the raid, he had them all rounded up. And they were expelled out of Kilmallock. Right? However, the parish priest and all the 2 brothers, started, these men had families, so he left them back to his cost, because one of them spotted him getting off the train, coming back from Cork.
I enjoyed this, it was fantastic and very well done. Just a small question, what would your opinion be of De Valera himself as an Irishman?
He spent most of the War of Independence in America. He spent most of the War of Independence in America. Well, we won't say that. When he did come back, he caused the biggest catastrophe of all.
Absolutely, yes.
That was the raid on the Customs House. I mean, like, the IRA lost 80 men. 80 men captured in a raid on the Customs House. I mean, why in the name of Jesus they go in and burn it at night? Why did they have to go in the middle of the day?
How come no one ever shot him?
Now, that's a loaded question. I don't know.
He's a Cork man, so right? You know what side
well, I tell you, there's a story told about Michael Collins, and History Ireland summed it up very well, I thought, a couple of years ago. They wanted you to make a historical statement in 6 words. And the man that won the competition won it in relation to Michael Collins and Dale LeBlanc. Arrived half shot, departed fully shot.
Anyway, I think we'll leave it at that. Again,
one more. Am I correct in saying that Dan Breen failed to get elected to the Dáil, his first attempt?
There was one attempt, certainly, one of the early attempts he didn't get elected, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
As a public representative, was Dan Breen of, we'd say, did he contribute as such to the parliamentary democracy? Or was that beyond him? Or, you know, he was a long time there.
He was a long time there, and I'm not too sure what he did. But
they got a pension anyway.
Indeed. Now, in fairness, I think in fairness, he was entitled to a pension. Now, the irony about it is that Breen was getting a disability pension from the Free State at an early stage, but someone in the Free State decided to cut it off. And it was actually John Joe O'Brien and Liam Hayes from Kilteely who fought a case to have it restored to him, even though they were on the opposite sides in the Civil War. Now, they didn't succeed, but they did fight the case for him. So, as I say, the thing about Breen is he transcended the Civil War.
He did.
Hogan didn't.
He brought Templemore to talk.
Right?
He brought the Galvanics to Templemore.
I suppose they needed plenty of girls, so that.
This is a smaller question than the one with Mr. De Valera. I just want to know what happened to the train on Knocklong.
It went on to Cork. It went on to Cork. Yeah. Now, one of the RIC men that there says that went through the train, they searched the train in Cork with a fellow called John Carroll. And John Carroll was from around Nina, outside Nina. And he was on his way home. He decided to stay, to duck in home at one stage when on transit from Dublin to Cork in an RIC convoy, and he went home to visit his people for the night. And unfortunately for him, someone that didn't like him spotted him, and he was captured and shot the following day.
The train was never. It was never kept for as a museum piece or anything like that.
No.
See, Pat Andrews would have got rid of it. Again, to us, the only company, to thank again, Tom, for the interesting.